Hey everyone, thanks for joining. This is John Rennick with IDAS Digital, presenting today on Asset Risk Analyzer. Thanks for your time, thanks for your attention. Looking at the attendee list, I see some people that are out of their normal time zones, so a special thanks to you folks for joining at off hours. As mentioned in the webinar invite and follow-up emails, today's webinar may be a little bit different than what you typically experience with a webinar because I've got 3 slides for you. Hopefully that's good news to you. And the one on the screen is one of those 3. Because I only have 3 slides, that means I'm going to spend the majority of time in the Asset Risk Analyzer product today, walking through a couple of scenarios with you, walking through some what I hope to be helpful tips and tricks, some how-tos, and then sharing some information based on feedback and questions that we have gotten from users to date. We launched Asset Risk Analyzer back in August, have had tremendous response from it. We've got over 60 companies that are using the tool to understand their riskiest assets and where they might focus their APM efforts. And that really is the intent. As you were aware, it's a free tool. We wanted to promote it within the reliability community to share some expertise, but also generate conversation and feedback. So it seems like it's achieving that purpose. What I plan to cover with you today is first just a quick overview of the tool itself. That will be brief, just a walkthrough. I think most of you have probably already experienced some of that, but I want to make sure that I clarify and cover that with you. Then an area of focus is going to be about how to get data and different ways of getting data into Asset Risk Analyzer. There's a couple of options for doing that. I want to walk through those and make sure that that's clear for you so that you can best use the tool. Then based upon feedback from folks like yourselves, we've got a number of people that have a maintenance management system in place with Maximo and SAP being the 2 dominant ones. We have recently developed, I'll call them templates. They're spreadsheets specific for Maximo, specific for SAP, that allow us to extract data for those systems, put it into the format needed for Asset Risk Analyzer, and therefore easily load it up into the tool, again, so that you can get value from your maintenance history data. And then the last thing I'll walk through is a little bit around the what if scenario capabilities within Asset Risk Analyzer, stepping you through that process, explaining a bit of it, and so forth. Before I switch over and jump into the product, on our webinar, there is a Q&A panel that you should see. Feel free as we go through this, or as I go through this, to drop a question in there. I will do my best to coordinate answering questions along the way, as well as at the end, certainly be able to spend some time answering your questions. The material I have prepared probably will take a little bit more than 30 minutes, depending upon questions, leaving plenty of time at the end for questions if those come up. So again, encourage you to use that. I will do my best as we walk through it to get to that. So that being said, let's get started. Let me switch over to the tool itself. And I apologize, I'm going to be hopping between different screens as I do this, just like you would in your use of the tool. All of you, I believe, have signed up for the tool. There may be a couple folks that haven't. If you have not signed up, assetriskanalyzer.com. There's this big green button here. Click that, put your name, email, and so forth in there, and then you will be sent a link to be able to log into the application. You'll have your own account. No data is shared or commingled. You have your own instance of the solution. All of it is private and exclusive to you. I have an account, so I'm going to use the sign-in option and just log into the tool itself. So first off, an overview. Here at the top is a welcome panel containing 4 tiles. I encourage you to use each of these tiles. The first one here is a video that we put together hosted out in YouTube that walks you through and orients you to the tool. If you haven't seen it, I would encourage you to walk through it. It's short, just over 3 minutes, but provides that good fundamental understanding of the capabilities and purpose behind the tool. Next, when we were putting it together, we wanted to make it as intuitive and easy to get started as we possibly could. So this second tile is a set of sample data. Inside the tool, we've embedded a data set that you can click on this. The application will load that data set up. It will create a demo scenario for you, complete with assets loaded, with MTBF values, probability of failure values, and so forth loaded. Feel free to use this demo scenario. Feel free to change any of the attributes of it that you want to. And, don't be afraid. You're not going to break anything. Feel free to get in there and mess around with it to help you get oriented to the solution itself. Returning back to the homepage, there are 2 additional tiles. Create a new analysis, pretty self-explanatory. We'll get into that in just a second. Or if you have analyses that you've already generated, you can open those up using the open an existing analysis option. That's it. Getting started is quick and easy. I'll also point out there is a dashboard provided. As I scroll down, it gives you a sense of how many analyses you have, the number of assets that you've loaded up, what MTBF might look like across those asset populations, and so forth. So good summary information, helping you understand and tracking your journey and usage of the tool. So now let's dive in. We're going to dive in by creating a new analysis, walking through that process and the details of it. So I'll select create new analysis. The first thing is to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it webinar. And then the next step is to define what we call a mission time. This is really, I like to think of it as a window. It's a window or a time period through which we're going to look and evaluate risk for the assets that we include in our analysis. So the mission time is important, and you have to define it because that is the context of the analysis, really. Now, the first thing I want to walk through is how to get data into the Asset Risk Analyzer tool. There are a couple ways of doing that. First, let's just manually plug an asset in and get that in there. Using the plus sign down here in the assets grid, I can click on that, and that opens up this asset panel, and I can manually, if you will, enter in an asset. I will point out, I feel it's pretty important to put in a description, and the reason for that is because this is a connection point, if you will, to our industry benchmark library. So I just put in a description here, and notice when I go over to taxonomy, the solution is mapping this up to asset classes that we have defined within our taxonomy. And what it does is it looks for the best possible match based upon the description that is entered here. And so, this one is suggesting, hey, it looks like a rotating pump, and absolutely correct. It will match that up for me. This will come into play as we go further into the tool and look at failure rates and that sort of thing. I'll point that out to you as we get to that point. I'll plug in an MTBF value here. I'll point out that value is in days. And I'll also plug in a cost of failure here. Now, this is probably a point to bring up and discuss a little bit. Some folks have asked, well, what is that cost value? What should I use? I think my first point to you would be strive for consistency. And what I mean by that is I think in an ideal scenario, the best cost value would be a combination of maintenance cost associated with a failure related to this asset combined with production impact. Now, some people have said to me, hey, John, I don't really have good production data. So in that case, maybe you just fall back to maintenance data. again, that's the point where I think consistency comes into play. You wouldn't want to mix some assets of production data where some don't. Consistency is going to give you a better result looking at the results of the risk analyzer tool. So it's that simple. When I plug in the data, I've got that here. Note that we calculate a probability for you. We use a distribution analysis, and we assume a shape factor of 1 if you're familiar with those distribution analyses here. Consequence, as I entered, is 25,000, and we get a nice probability plot down here. I will point out the risk, right? Keep in mind the mission time that I entered in, right? That's that window through which we're evaluating risk. And then we have the start date of that mission time. Currently, we're right here. And then the risk is going to be 77%. That correlates with that probability of failure that we see at the end of the mission time for this piece of equipment. So just a couple pieces of information. I give it a name, best description that I've got. Drop an MTBF value and a cost value in. And when I do that, that populates that asset there in my asset grid. Great, simple, effective way to drop single assets in. But most folks are not working around single assets. They're working around populations of assets, be it a unit, be it a system, whatever the case may be. It's really a grouping of assets that folks want to work with. So to facilitate that process, we have embedded a template or a spreadsheet inside the tool. I'm going to download that template and open it up here for you. So the template is really straightforward. This is what it looks like when it comes down. It opens it up on the instructions tab. I'm going to enable editing. You know, if you're like me, you probably gloss over the instructions. Just know that the details of how to use this spreadsheet are here, and descriptions of each of the inputs that we're expecting in the spreadsheet is also here. But the meat of it, or the working side of it, if you will, is here on the assets tab in the spreadsheet. And so here I can enter in information. So I'll just put in another asset here. Let's see, let's make this a gearbox. Plug in, like we saw before, a probability of failure or MTBF value. I'll assign a consequence value, right? And I can go through that process of populating that data inside of my spreadsheet. Now I'm going to save that information that I just entered. And what I want to do now is walk you through the simple process of loading that up. So I've got this file here that I downloaded. I can use an import option here, or what I find to be easiest is to grab the spreadsheet, drag it over onto my browser window. Notice it changes and indicates I can drop it. I drop that spreadsheet in, and it grabs that data, it validates that data, it does a taxonomy mapping like I talked about, and plugs it in here to my asset grid. So I've got my gearbox in here, and note here the taxonomy mapping has been done, right? So using that description, it says, hey, that looks like power transmission, and that was a 90% match, so pretty good there. Pretty high degree of confidence around that tool. Calculates that probability for us, uses a consequence value, and therefore calculates risk. Probability times consequence equals a risk. So that's two ways, right? I can manually enter the data using the plus sign. I can download the template, complete the template, and either drag and drop it or use the import option, browse to the file, find it, and suck it in. We hope you find that tremendously easy and quick to be able to get the data in to be able to do the analysis. Now, the next thing I want to do is transition back real quick to slides here and talk a little bit more about some new tools or templates that we've developed based upon feedback from folks like you. With a predominance of Maximo and SAP, we've developed these two spreadsheets. They allow us to first extract the data out of the source system, so whichever maintenance management system you may have. Now, I should point out, I'm talking about Maximo and SAP, these spreadsheets could really be used with a variety of systems, but we have a little bit extra maybe that we've put in around those two systems because we know them so well and have so much experience with them and can do that. If you have a different maintenance management system, reach out. We'll work with you and do what we can to support tweaks, changes, and what have you. But the steps and the process that we'll go through with these spreadsheets is first we want to extract that work order, that maintenance data out of those systems. We're going to drop that maintenance data into these templates, and I'm going to walk you through the data that we would be pulling and show you how we would pull it. Then the next step we find is, unfortunately, I think most of you would agree with me, there tends to be some gaps when we look at work flagged as a failure. Either the breakdown flag, failure flag, whatever you want to call it, is maybe not used to the degree it should be, right? And so one of the things that we like to look at is making adjustments to that failure flag, ensuring that we're getting the right data into the Asset Risk Analyzer tool. So we'll look at that. And then the last stop is, how do we take that data that we gathered, that we classified and so forth, and load that back into the tool? So I'm going to walk you through these 4 steps. I'm going to use an example of SAP for this, and I'll try to talk about Maximo and maybe some of the nuances of that because it's just a slight bit of difference. So let me switch over to another spreadsheet. So this is our SAP export import template. So we have developed this based upon our experience of working with SAP and have a similar version of this for Maximo. As you will note, there are 3 tabs here across the bottom. There's an asset tab, which we're pulling asset information in. There's an order tab used for that work history information, and then how we're compiling it to be able to load it into the solution. Now, for those of you running SAP, to get this information, if you're familiar with SAP, you know that there are transaction codes inside of SAP. Those transaction codes allow you to do different functions. There's one called IH08. If you don't have SAP, there's a separate extraction you can do to query data for Maximo. But in SAP, you use IH08 as your transaction code. And when you do that, you would select this list of data values out of SAP, and then take that result from that transaction and just paste it in here into the spreadsheet. And you can see here, I've pasted a set of SAP data into the spreadsheet. This gives us our equipment list. It gives us our descriptions of that information and some other details about the equipment. Now, when I flip over to the order tab, similar information. It's just related to work history. It is in SAP, it's a different transaction. You may be familiar with this one, IW39. This allows us to extract that work history data. And you can see here the fields that we're looking to extract. And I've done that and pasted that information in here. Now, this is where that extra step of flagging failures comes in. If you have that breakdown flag, you can use it. But we find that people will typically need to go in and look at making some modifications to that breakdown flag, and you can plug those in here as you go through it, right? We're highlighting those in red just as a reference for you. So run IW39, extract the data, validate the failure associated with that, and then that takes us over to this third tab, which is the summary information. We have our asset data that gets dropped in here. In some cases, we may prompt you for an installation date. That's based upon the orders that we extract out. And using that data and the data from the work history, we are providing you with 2 options really here. The first one is a mean time between order. And that gives you that perspective of using those orders, looking at the time duration between those and using that as your failure. The other option is doing it as it's been classified, meaning that breakdown flag or that failure flag, and calculating an MTBF value. The choice is yours, whichever approach you want to take. We're providing you with options here. And, if you've got a sharp eye, you can look through these and see differences in that. For example, here's 43 orders. This one on the failure side breaks down to 15, meaning of the total orders that were identified for that piece of equipment, only 15 of those truly represented a failure based upon our failure flag. That's an example of the differences that might be between the two approaches. Now, when you look at the spreadsheet and you've populated those two other tabs, set your failure flags, we're populating this information here for you. So you can see this is the exact same format we need for our loader. And so it's this information that I'm going to copy out, drop into the loader, and load back into the risk analysis tool. Last thing I'll point out here is, individually you can choose between either MTBF or the MTBO value. Again, the choice is yours based upon your data and what makes the most sense for you. So let me do this. I'm going to copy this set of data out, and I'm going to go to my download file. So I've got this same template here. I'll open up the one I just used a second ago, and I'm going to paste those values in to the spreadsheet. So this, is good to go, and I'm going to load this up. Let me save that and close my spreadsheet file. Go back to the risk analyzer tool, and I'm going to pull this up, and I'm just going to drag it across. So when I do that, drop it. Now, I did this on purpose. It's pointing out the fact that, hey, wait a minute, John, you had a gearbox in there before. I've already got that in the analysis. I'm going to go ahead and handle that for you, but just making you aware of it. Thanks, Risk Analyzer tool. Good to go. Now, I could always, stop that, go back and delete it out if I didn't want that. But for the purposes of this, I'm just going to walk through it. So all that data that I just grabbed out of SAP, put into the template, and then ran through has now been loaded up and is available for me in the risk analysis tool. So a couple things. I'll make a kind of a highlight here for the library. I've got a total of 16 assets I've loaded. Of those 16 of them have low MTBF. Now, I can go in and make some modifications, and we'll see how that plays out. So, for example, I'll grab the one that I created manually, open it up. I can come in here and make some changes, right? Let's change our MTBF to 1460, 1460 days. And when I do that, notice that this turns green. Why is that? Well, that light bulb is used to indicate if it's orange, that MTBF value is below what we have for our industry benchmark. If it's green, it means that my data that I've put in indicates a better MTBF when compared to the library. And then as we go through what if analysis, we'll actually see a case where the light bulb will turn to blue. And when it does that, it means that we are using that industry benchmark data and saying, what if I got to that industry benchmark level with my analysis or with my asset, I should say, and what would the differences and impacts of that be? So behind the scenes, you are seeing where we're taking all of this information and comparing it to the benchmark to give you some insights into maybe where are some areas of opportunity for me. And certainly with this analysis, I've got lots of areas of opportunity. So speaking of opportunity, notice here, we've also summarized in the analysis that there's $120,000 of opportunity with the 16 assets that I've loaded. There's also an $88,000 risk exposure. So the way that works is the risk exposure is the sum of all risks that I've got here. And the opportunity value is, in this case, I'm using the slider and it's set at 50%. What if I were able to imagine drawing a line down here, reduce that probability of failure to 50%? That represents a potential opportunity for me of $120,000. So there's a lot of money on the table right now with this analysis and a lot of risk that we could potentially be mitigating. To see how we might want to approach that, to see where we might want to start, we can go through a what if analysis to come up with some different scenarios, right? But right away, there's a lot of value in knowing, hey, these assets appear to be doing worse than the industry average. And I can also, just do some simple Pareto analysis and saying, wow, these here at the top, if I just did something to improve those, that could have a tremendous impact on my operations. So let's next jump into what if analysis. So I sorted by taxonomy here, and I'm going to kind of make an assumption and say, well, what if we just focused on pumps and we decided to do some sort of improvement strategy around our pumps? So I can select any and all, these assets. I'll throw a motor in there too, just for a little bit of variety. I can select any of these assets and flag them for improvement. The other thing I can do is I can use the menu option over here for improve, and that gives me the ability to go in. I can add improvement notes. And as I add notes, that'll be captured. The other thing is using the industry benchmark library that we have. That library includes comprehensive asset strategies for all these major asset classes. So it gives me a hint or a highlight into what's contained in that strategy. So I opened it up for a motor. I'm seeing that the strategy in that industry benchmark library covers failure modes such as bearing failure, bus bar failure, component wear, contact short circuit, etc. And that in addition to those failure modes includes 27 protections out of the IDAS library and a total of 26 activities that could be implemented to help improve the performance of this asset, or said another way, reduce that likelihood of failure and ensure the performance of that asset. Now, it is a free tool, so an upgrade would be required to IDAS APM to be able to see the full details of that strategy. We just provide you a hint of that here within the free tool. Okay, so I marked some assets here, and these are the ones I want to target with my improvement efforts. So here at the top, there is a what if option. So when I select that what if option, that takes me over to the what if scenarios. The base case is the data that I loaded. So in the base case, we had a mission time of 3 years, starting in January of 2021. You can see again the 16 assets that we loaded. 15 of them represent low MTBF compared to the industry library. And again, we see the overall risk exposure and the opportunity that would be available to us. Now, I've got the ability to add a scenario. So I'm going to add a scenario by clicking that option. It defaults a name, it defaults a description for me, and we've got 3 default selections available to us. The first one is improve poor performers. What that would do is take every asset that was below the industry standard. It would improve the MTBF to the industry level and show me what the results of that would be. The second option is improve marked assets. Remember, I marked 5 or 6 assets, however many it was, using that flag. Doing so, set that mark, and I can say I want to focus on just those and create a scenario around that. The third option is user analysis, and this is the catch-all. This makes no assumptions and lets you go in and individually tweak and modify probability of failure and so forth around assets to see what the impact would be. Because I marked some assets, I'm going to use that option. So I select improved marked assets, click on create and close. It's going to calculate that scenario for me and populate this summary card. Same time period is being used, same 16 assets. Notice the number of assets with low MTBF has been reduced That's because I flagged those, and those were brought up to that industry benchmark level. Risk was reduced by doing so, and the savings, some savings were realized out of that opportunity. So we can click on this edit option and go into the specifics of this scenario. So as we go through here, I'll sort this probability of failure. Let's do it this way. And you can see, the ones that I marked have been reduced in that probability of failure. That reduction in probability of failure has reduced the risk associated with those assets, and also is what is providing me with an opportunity value up here at the top. I will also point out that you notice that light bulb has changed from orange to blue, indicating that the industry benchmark is being used. And again, it's blurred out. That's not your vision. We blur that out because it's a free tool. Again, an upgrade can open up that information to you. So it's very quick. It's very easy to go through a what if scenario and kind of play out, what might be the impacts if I make some changes. Keep in mind, you can open up in the what if scenario any one of these assets. You can make changes to this information. You can revert back to the previous MTBF value if you want, potentially change cost values, that sort of thing, as you see fit, to tune and come up with different scenarios or different options for your analysis. And as you do that, those changes will be saved for you and then represented here on the what if summary cards. Now, another question that I'm asked about is, hey, I only get to do one. That is true in the free version. In the upgrade, which is a $55 a month subscription, that opens that door for you and allows you to have access to persist additional scenarios. But in the free version, you can always delete a scenario, recreate, go through that process, and create it under different circumstances and so forth, if you wish. So that's the what if scenario. So now let me flip back here, and as I said, I had about 35 or 30 minutes of material. That's kind of the basis of what I was thinking of going through today. Again, I'll highlight the fact that we've got a Q&A panel. You can enter in your questions in that Q&A panel, and I'll do my best to get through those, spending just a few more minutes doing so. All right, so let's go back to the tool, and I'm going to go through a couple of the questions. So there's a question about, can you change probability distribution and what other distributions are available? So the distribution, let me go back here, go to my analysis, and I'll open up an asset that I want. And I'm saying yes to this, right? Because if I make changes, that would invalidate the scenario. So that's the warning message for it. So on the probability, we're using a Weibull analysis and a shape factor of 1 by default. The options you have are to change inputs into that, which would change that probability percent. Weibull is the distribution type that we use. Other types in the free tool are not supported. So I think that's the answer to that question. We have other flexibility in the paid version as far as inputting probability and so forth to make different tweaks and changes. Let's see, what else? Industry benchmarks. What is the source for that? So our library that we have, which is kind of behind the scenes with this free tool and is fully published and available in IDAS APM, is based upon years of information, years of analysis, going through RCM and FMEA studies, looking at populations of assets and that sort of thing. And it is as I described it, an industry benchmark. So It's pulled from multiple industries, pulls in over 200 different classes of assets. And so when I say a class of asset, if I open up this taxonomy, a class of asset would be represented here, centrifugal pump, metering pump, submersible pump. Those represent classes. And again, there's over 200 of those represented in that library. And that's where we're making our comparisons. So, obviously you're going to be operating and working in a single industry, and you're making a more generic comparison. In the free tool, we think it's a great value add and a great way to be able to understand where you are. And certainly your data that you load into the analysis tool really is where you need to drive that. Let's see what else. Oh, I know one of the question about the free version. I mentioned when I went to the what if scenario that the free version provides the one scenario. One other limitation around the free version here, if I go to the homepage, you can see in the free version we allow up to 10 unique analyses to be created. And each of those analyses has a limit of 100 assets per. Now, in that $55 a month version, those limits are taken off. And I will say, we are seeing that a number of people are using the tool and are able to create more than 10. And the way they're doing that is, once they get to this point, you can go in and you can delete an analysis once you get past that, and add a new one, right? So people might create the sample analysis like this one here that I did just at the start of the webinar, delete that one out, and now I've got room or another slot to be able to insert another one. And if you're curious, about some of the details, I'll flash that upgrade screen there for you, describing those. There's a question about, can I provide some examples of the strategies and what might be included in those with the upgrade? There's a specific reference to predictive maintenance and vibration with that question. So in the free tool, those specifics are not available. But I can tell you, when we look at rotating assets, vibration is one of those key predictive maintenance or technologies that is part of understanding the health, condition, and failure risk associated with it. So I know from experience, our library includes activities for collection of vibration data. It includes analytics for evaluation of vibration data and thresholds associated with vibration levels for different classes of rotating assets that can be used. So if you're interested in that, I'd be happy to get on another call with you and share some of those details with you and walk you through it as needed. There's a question about what I showed with the taxonomy. So let me go in and open up the analysis and open up an asset. Again, I'm going to suppress that because it's saying, hey, if you make changes, you're what if. Question is about what if there is a new taxonomy item? And I think the question is really about what if I want to make an addition, or what if I have assets that are not represented in your list of asset classes? Certainly possible, right? We can't have every asset class covered. We look to extend and provide better coverage as we go. And we'd love to work with you on that. If it's not covered, then you can't do that industry match, and so you would lose out on that comparison to the benchmark, the highlighting of that light bulb, and that capability. But certainly, you could use your own assets as comparison and look at the risk analysis, look at the probability of failures, and compare your like assets across the board to have an understanding of bad actors, poor performers, and that sort of thing. There's a licensing question here about that upgrade, and is it per person for that upgrade. So the way that the tool is used is it is an individual user account. You sign up with your email, so that reference here for that 55 is per user or per email, maybe to be a little bit more specific. Now, if you're interested in using it across an organization, reach out to me. Let's talk, because there's some maybe options that we could talk through about that to see how it could be used and so forth. Let's see, there's a question about Monte Carlo simulation. So Monte Carlo as an analysis option. So Monte Carlo is not in this free tool. Again, being a free tool, we have to put some guardrails around it. So we're not taking it into those areas at this point in time. Who knows? Maybe down the line we'll expand it, but we'll see where that goes. All right, so bear with me. I'm going through questions here. And hey, thanks for the questions. They're good ones, that's for sure. How would I implement an equipment hierarchy in the case that you have multiple units at a plant? I'm not exactly sure where this question is going, so I'm going to take a shot at answering it. And if I don't cover it for you, again, reach out. I'd be happy to maybe go individually into more detail. My stab at answering your question is that first and foremost, IDAS APM has full support for asset hierarchies and that sort of thing. In context of Risk Analyzer, maybe what you would do is create an analysis that incorporated one unit within your facility, create another analysis and load the data separately into that covered another unit. And then you'd have those two in the free tool, and you could look at comparisons between those. You certainly could load them both into a single analysis. Again, not sure the number of assets that we're talking about here, so you may run into that 100 asset barrier unless you upgrade. But two units could be loaded into one analysis if the numbers worked, and you'd have that comparison directly in the single analysis. Hopefully that covers what you were getting at there, and if not, again, reach out. A question just came in: is the tool capable of scripting and more advanced capabilities, right? Customizations. So again, this webinar is focused on Asset Risk Analyzer. The free tool certainly does not have that capability. However, if you want to talk more about IDAS APM and the configuration capabilities that are available there, there's a whole range of configuration capabilities and scripting that you may be interested in. I think by the nature of your question, you might be kind of inquiring about, could you do some more scripting around maybe condition monitoring, data input, and that sort of thing. And that capability is in IDAS APM and gives you that flexibility. So probably a good conversation to have with you, maybe to make sure that I'm providing you with a better answer to your question. Let me go back here and just put this up on the screen. Whoops. Again, I'd encourage you, if you got any more questions, they're coming in, and I'm trying to do my best to answer these. You can submit those via the Q&A, but also on the screen, I've got my email address. Reach out by email if you don't want to ask the question here, you want to follow up, or if you just kind of curious about the tool, maybe some specifics around your use of it, how you might use it, how you might get some more value out of it, and so forth. It's probably important to reiterate, we feel like it's a bit of a game changer putting a free reliability analysis tool out there. And yes, granted, it is limited in its breadth and scope, but it is a free tool that you can use, share with others, and they can use as well. We did it because, one, we found as we were engaging with people around asset performance management, around trying to implement condition monitoring, trying to move from reactive to more proactive maintenance approaches, there was a fundamental question that came up. And that fundamental question was, where do I get started? Or they were looking at options and faced with these big, large enterprise deployments that would overwhelm the organization. So this free tool allows you to use your data, plug your data in quickly and easily, be able to answer that question of where might be a good place to start, where might I get the biggest bang for my buck if I make some quick improvements. And then, if you're interested, let's have a conversation. My email's there. Reach out to me personally, or go to isdigital.com to learn more about us, what we're doing, and our other tools and capabilities that go well beyond what I've shared today with you and this free tool. I think with that, I might call it a wrap, unless any other questions come in. Look forward to continuing the conversation with you individually. I hope that this informal format of a webinar, going through the tool and basing it on some of the feedback we've gotten so far, is helpful and informative to you. I'd love feedback around that. If you would like to see more like this or have more questions and you want me to answer, let me know. We'll do it. And with that, I think I'm going to thank you for your time today. Hope it was valuable and appreciate you joining. Look forward to talking to you again soon. With that, bye everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.